For generations, we've been told a single story, that Africa was conquered easily, that resistance was weak, and that defeat was inevitable. But that story collapses under the weight of evidence. Across the continent, African states didn't just resist European invasion, they defeated it. Some won decisive battles. Others delayed colonization for decades, and a few remained independent entirely. So why don't we learn about this tonight? We uncover the African victories that colonial history tried to bury. In 1896, Italy attempted what every European empire believed was inevitable, the conquest of Ethiopia. But Italy underestimated Ethiopia fatally. Emperor Menelik II unified regional armies, modernized his forces with new weapons, and skillfully used diplomacy to secure arms from rival European powers. At the Battle of Adwa, over 100,000 Ethiopian soldiers faced a technologically advanced European army. The result shocked the world. Italy was crushed. Ethiopia remained independent, the only African nation to defeat a European colonial power in a full-scale modern war. Adwa wasn't just a victory. It was proof that European domination was not destiny. In 1879, the British Empire, the most powerful military force on earth, invaded the Zulu kingdom in southern Africa. They expected an easy victory. Instead, they suffered one of the most humiliating defeats in British military history. At the Battle of Adwa, Zulu forces used incredible speed, strict discipline, and their famous horns of the bull formation to completely surround and destroy the British troops. Over 1,300 British soldiers were killed. This wasn't chaos, it was brilliant military intelligence, though Britain later returned with overwhelming force and eventually won the war. The Battle of Adwa shattered the myth of European invincibility. Meanwhile, in West Africa, the powerful Ashanti Empire didn't fall quietly. Between 1824 and 1900, the Ashanti fought a series of wars against the British and defeated them multiple times. They captured modern weapons, forced humiliating retreats, and defended their sovereignty through a combination of military strategy and political unity. British records from the time describe Ashanti generals as disciplined, organized, and formidable opponents. Colonization only succeeded after Britain committed overwhelming resources to the campaign, and even then, resistance never fully ended. The Ashanti victories were erased from popular history not because they didn't happen, but because they directly contradicted the imperial narrative of effortless conquest. And the Horn of Africa, resistance took on a different form. The Dervish state, led by the charismatic Syed Mohammed Abdullah Hassan, fought against Britain, Italy, and Ethiopia for over 20 years. This was not a minor rebellion, it was state-level warfare that tied down colonial armies for 2 decades. The British, frustrated by his success, nicknamed him the Mad Mullah. But madness doesn't sustain to decades of organized resistance against multiple empires. In the end, it was only the use of aerial bombardment, one of the first times air power was used in Africa, that finally brought the Dervish state to an end. Even then, it was not a straightforward conquest, it was a war of exhaustion. France's invasion of Algeria in 1830 sparked a conflict that was far from a simple colonial takeover. What followed was not just colonization, it was total war. Under the leadership of the brilliant Emir Abdelkader, Algerian forces repeatedly defeated French troops using guerrilla tactics, superior mobility, extensive intelligence networks, and shrewd diplomacy. France eventually occupied Algeria, but only after decades of brutal, relentless warfare that nearly bankrupted the French state and cost countless lives. Victory came at a price Europe rarely admits, and the struggle for Algerian independence would continue for more than a century. So why were these stories hidden? Colonial history was never written to tell the complete truth. It was written to justify domination. African victories directly challenged the convenient myth of European superiority. So they were minimized, reframed as minor incidents, or erased entirely from the history books. Fierce resistance was dismissed as rebellion. Decisive defeats were labeled temporary setbacks. But history doesn't disappear just because it's inconvenient. Africa was not conquered because it was weak. Africa was colonized because Europe was relentless. But resistance existed everywhere, in every corner of the continent. And victory happened far more often than we were taught. Reclaiming these stories isn't just about pride, it's about accuracy. And history, above all, deserves accuracy. If this documentary challenged what you were taught in school, subscribe to our channel. We're dedicated to telling the parts of African history that were skipped.